Hello, 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 everyone. And how are you doing? You have reached the Inflamed Sisters Thriving podcast. Welcome. The Inflamed Sisters Thriving podcast is a safe place created to guide women living with chronic illnesses to uncover their purpose by doing what they were meant to do, move in power by advocating for themselves, and accelerate their growth in health, career, and business. You will learn how to stop hiding and how to start thriving. We will inspire, educate, and motivate you as we show you Inflamed Sisters thrive together always. I'm excited today to have our lovely guest, and her name is Erika Sneed. But before we fully introduce her, let me remind you, I'm Katina Morrison, your host and a chronic illness warrior who is also a registered nurse, purposed to be able to share amazing stories like these. And Erika, if you could please introduce the audience to you and tell them more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so
Mhm.
much for having me, Katina. I loved your intro. Let me remind you who your host is. Hello, everyone. My name is Erika Sneed. I am a chronic pain warrior. It's just a delight to be here and to chat. I love hearing that beginning where it's like move in power. I think if I would have heard that a year ago, I maybe would have rolled my eyes and thought that's not for me. So if you're listening and that feels a little outside of your reach, keep listening. Let's connect because I'm like, that feels relatable. And I also feel like there's been a ton of learning and growth. A little bit about me. One, I've got my kitty here. She's desperate for cuddling. Hopefully she doesn't interrupt too much. But essentially, I have chronic pain in my ankle. I potentially might have chronic regional pain syndrome, although undiagnosed. I had a trip off the curb incident back in 2017, and I sprained my ankle. I broke my foot. I had the ups and downs of a couple surgeries and physical therapy and unlimited sort of, I'm doing everything right and nothing's working. And then in 2020, I heard, you can keep going at this pace and do unlimited PT, and it's about as good as it's going to get, which was equal parts liberating and equal parts excruciating. It was really hard to navigate that and kind of absorb, wow, okay, as good as it's going to get. Got it. And then I also just recently got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which, as you know, kind of explains a lot. And you're like, oh, okay. It also is kind of one of these things that I feel like I've known for a while, but haven't known how to accept. So a part of it to me feels really freeing. And then have endometriosis as well. So kind of just a whole variety of my body struggling, and that's okay.
Wow. So you are a 3 for 1 too. Um,
Yes.
Chronic pain in the ankle, fibromyalgia, as well as endometriosis. The same for me.
Mm-hmm.
I have rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, and previously I had endometriosis symptoms. I currently don't have the symptoms since my hysterectomy in 2020, but you actually have a lot going on, sis. And that's why you are an inflamed sister thriving. Now, what was the journey like? Because the last time that you and I spoke,
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia at that
Correct. Mm-hmm.
time. And I had a feeling that you probably had it when we were talking because of the things that we were discussing and some
Mm-hmm.
of the symptoms that you had. Can
Mm-hmm.
you kind of explain the journey to the diagnosis? You explained that it felt freeing, but was that an easy journey for you?
Yeah, great questions. Um, I kind of feel like I wasn't really aware of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is summer 2021, I had laparoscopic surgery to determine, do I have endometriosis? What's going on here? What are we finding? And my recovery did not go as I was planning on and as I was prepped for. They kind of say you're going to be okay. It's going to be smooth. It's going to be uncomfortable, but a couple days, you'll get up, you'll move your body, you'll keep going. And I think one thing to keep in mind is I've had intensive surgeries where, an ankle surgery, I'm on the couch for 6 weeks, just resting. And then from there, starting the journey. So I had some context for surgery and basically describing, and then I did another round of ankle surgery. So basically going in, all I heard was, oh yeah, you've done that before. This will be no problem. Well, my recovery, I just kept feeling like, I'm like knocked down. I can't eat. I'm in a ton of pain. I'm following everything that I see. I'm Googling what to do, how to get up and move when you're in a ton of pain. I felt kind of confused by my recovery, but I didn't have anything concrete to like call my surgeon about. Like there was nothing in terms of like a glaring post-operation follow-up, right? It was just more so like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm in a lot of pain after this surgery. And when I went to my post-op appointment, I was barely walking. I mean, I was like leaning on my husband, Alex, and like, he was definitely helping me get into the appointment. And I remember she looked at me and she was like, uh-oh. And I have been to plenty of appointments where I feel the judgment and I'm like immediately sort of on the defensive because I hear her, uh-oh. And I'm like, no, you don't get to say uh-oh to me because I've been following your directions. I've been, what she said is once we kind of got in the room and started digesting, how's this going? What are you feeling? What are your symptoms like? She said to me really directly, and I appreciate it. She said, no, Erika, I know who you are. And I know you're like a type A go-getter. I know that you are kind of doing everything that I told you. And I look at you and you are quite like weak and white and pale and unwell. And something's not right here. And she said, this is so abnormal that I'm wondering if something else is going on with your body, potentially fibromyalgia. And I remember when she said that, it was like, okay. But of course, in the moment, I was like, great, but how do I get better? Like I'm trying to recover from this surgery. And so that was back in summer 2021. And at the start of 2022, in January, I, through my work, had different insurance. So I was like, you know what? I need to circle back. I need to find primary care. I need to check in on this. I need to do my work. But when you go through appointment after research, after connecting, after health insurance, after COPE, when you go through all of that, it's quite overwhelming. And so I didn't really get connected with a doctor until that summer of 2022. So it took some time to sort of unpack. Even just going into this like primary care appointment, I was using my knee scooter for my ankle because I was having a bad pain day. And that doctor was like, oh, wow, like, why do you have a knee scooter? So I'm like, the judgment, what's happening? But then she really wanted to understand and update my chart, yada, yada. But basically I told her, hey, this pain is so bad. I have tingling all over. I'm really weak most of the time. I'm not sure what this looks like. And at that point, she thought it was more so like your body is not used to and hasn't exercised those muscles that would support you with walking. But follow-up appointment, blood work, in-person testing. She was like, I actually think you're right here. We're not seeing lupus. We're not seeing cancer. We're not seeing some other things that we could diagnose. And based on your symptoms, I'm about as confident as I can get. With the caveat that she doesn't like to diagnose fibromyalgia because she would prefer to treat the symptom and not sort of slap on a diagnosis. And I think what I appreciate about that is I'm like, oh yeah, there's definitely things to unpack and I want to work on those. And it was helpful for me to have a diagnosis after years of hearing ankle pain, doing everything right, nothing's working, ankle pain. For me, I'm like, oh, that's actually helpful to know that my body is like crumbling at times and it's not just because I'm weak. So in terms of sort of recapping, I didn't know I was on that journey toward a diagnosis. I mean, I knew I was going to kind of explore it as a post-surgery follow-up, but it took a while. And I also had to keep advocating for myself to where my last appointment, I sort of gently pushed her and I said, I understand that you typically don't diagnose. I need to understand more about that because in my context, I feel as though that's almost saying we're going to keep going as is. And I feel like I need to understand more about what this could be in order to accept it and make it my own, which she said, Erika, I really appreciate that. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Nobody's ever really told me that, but I hear where you're coming from. And I'm like, you know what? gold star to me. Good job, Erika. Pat on the back, because I have had years of practicing what am I going to say to this doctor and writing it down and pulling up my notes and advocating and questioning and then having tons of anxiety after these appointments. Oh my gosh, they didn't understand me and what do I do? And so the fact
Mhm.
that I feel like I kind of kept going and kept advocating and it got me somewhere, I'm like, yes. And so, yeah, that feels about as good as it could be because it feels really freeing to know that.
Wonderful. So, Erica is a champion in advocacy. I love the way that you describe your conversations with your doctor, and how you use your voice. It likely took you some time to find your voice to be able to express what your needs and what your wants are, and that's what advocacy or being your own advocate is about. Is finding your
Mhm.
voice no matter how long it takes you to do it, and then using it to express to your doctors what your needs and wants are, and to get answers to questions.
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't know. The thing is, having answers is always better than not having any at all. Being someone who went 30 years
Yeah.
without answers or a diagnosis, I
Oof.
definitely want everyone else to shorten that time. So tell
Mhm.
me, what was that process like finding your voice? And how does it feel to be able to use it in the manner that you do and to be respected, because your doctor seems to be actually respecting
Mhm.
your voice.
Thank you for those
Hmm.
lovely compliments. That's so kind. I'm actually starting to tear up because you said like how have you found your voice? And I the first thing that comes to mind is I don't know. And then I'm like, that's actually not true. I do know.
Hmm.
I think there's something with sort of the perseverance. I got often like, wow, it's so cool that you're persevering. It's just like awesome that you're persevering through your pain. I don't I don't resonate with that because I didn't choose this. And so I don't view it as perseverance. I view it as this is what I have to do. So I have no choice but to persevere. It's not to say that I don't appreciate people sort of recognizing, I see that you have pain and I see that that's difficult. But the perseverance isn't something I resonate with.
Hmm.
And I feel like because I spent years, again, not 30, wow, that is like, whew, I feel that because I'm like, I went
Hmm.
through like 4 years of not knowing, and that felt like a long time. But going through all of those appointments and advocating and sharing exactly and what are your symptoms and what's happening, and I mean just practically for my ankle it'd be like, and how many reps did you do? Oh yeah, you only did 15. Okay, that's what it says on the paper for your at home exercises. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing everything right, but I think there was just this like lack of understanding, and I had to get to the point where I'd show up to appointments and sort of, here's what I've done, here's what I interpreted from that, here's how it went, here's what I said, here's what I'm trying, here's how I feel, you tell me what your read is on that. Again, it was not sunshine and rainbows. I mean, I used to like get really anxious on my chest and sort of like, okay, I felt this, and like unnecessarily like heating up in these like appointments and these offices. Like, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm doing everything I can. And my biggest recommendation is like just continue to find that number one thing that you need to get across to your doctor.
Hmm.
So for me, what like you said, it seems like your doctor respected you. The number one thing I needed to her to understand is I'm not some random person that's looking for diagnosis for this and here's this and then I need support with this. I need a diagnosis because I need to kind of calm my inner critic, and I need you to kind of recognize what I'm saying, not because I need pity from others, but because for me, I know there's something wrong and I'm trying to express to you what that is. That's what I feel like was my number one. Now, before it used to be like, my number one goal is I'm going to tell my doctor, I can't keep walking. I can't keep doing this. This is really challenging, or this type squat is hurting my ankle. And they're like, really? Why is the squat hurting? I'm like, I don't know. That's my number one thing. There was a time when like I would have to write that thing down, practice it, share about it, sort of rehearse it. It doesn't always feel good, but if that's my biggest piece, is like the voice comes when you can identify what's my number one takeaway, or going into this appointment or going into this need. What is it that I need to get across? And then how am I going to communicate that? It's tough.
Mhm.
And also, I feel really blessed that my doctor respected me, like I said, because it wasn't perfect from the start. I would say I'm somebody that needs a little bit of empathy from a doctor plus expertise.
Mhm.
And she kind of came in, like I said, with, why are you using your knee scooter? So immediately I'm on the defensive, because I'm like, well, how much time do you have? How much context do I need to give you? But what I realized over time is she's coming in from the perspective of, this is what I do. I need the facts. And so once I sort of understood her orientation toward appointments, I was more likely to mold to that language per se. I also don't
Mhm.
know if I'm going to stick with her forever. I don't know if she's my like continuous person, but she was what I needed for this moment.
And that is a beautiful story of advocacy, of finding your voice and learning to use it. It's not easy. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that we are all born to be able to do efficiently and effectively. I know with me
Mm-hmm.
being a registered nurse, teaching others how to advocate and what questions to ask, and, you know, how to get the answers that they needed, and, supporting them through that journey was easy. But I knew for myself, there were times in my journey that I could have spoken up more, but there's times also that you encounter doctors who are the experts in their field, and they're the ones who, have trained all these other doctors. And you think, well,
Mm-hmm.
surely they have the answer. And if they tell me it's in my head, that was actually the strike for me, was when a doctor told me that it was in my head, and that, the pain and the swelling was
uh,
all a part of fibromyalgia, and will really, sometimes they associate fibromyalgia with mental health and not
mm-hmm.
necessarily with an actual condition. And so
Yes.
doctors will label a condition fibromyalgia rather than finding what really is causing it, which at
Yeah.
times can actually be an autoimmune condition. But yes, for me, finding my voice, the strike was there, but it took me, to know that I needed to learn to hire and fire doctors appropriately, and find
Mm-hmm.
doctors who are willing to be a part of my team and not dictators of my health. And that's pretty much my 30-year journey of medical gaslighting, misdiagnosis, and then being told it was in my head, which is also medical gaslighting, by the way. And
Yes.
then transitioning over into finally finding a team of doctors that support me. And I love the way that you said, I may not be with her forever, but at
Mm-hmm.
least in this time, she is providing me
Mm-hmm.
what I need. The moment that she's not, then sis, you gotta go. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to
Mm-hmm.
go, and it's
Yeah.
okay whether you're with the
Mm-hmm.
doctor 10 years or not. It's okay to tell
Mm-hmm.
them, it's been nice working with you this time, but at this time you cannot fulfill my needs. Um,
Yeah.
I'm going to be going on to the next one. So
Mm-hmm.
very
Yeah.
good. Who would
Yeah.
have
And I think,
known? Uh
oh, go
huh.
ahead. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I want to hear this.
I was just going to say, I think like that's what it's all about, is like, okay, so it's not personal. And
Mm-hmm.
how do I get to a place where I don't view it as something personal? Because I was 22, 23, 24. Like, I'm young. I'm like, are they judging me? I'm like, I don't need that. But I feel like the light bulb went off for me when my therapist was like, I wonder what advice you would give to your friend. And I'm like, oh, yeah, very different. And she's like, okay, so let's kind of workshop that. And essentially, would you recommend, like in this case, would you recommend your friends stay in this environment, knowing that your voice is not heard, knowing that they're not getting answers? And I would say no. And what I would say is, no, you're not staying there. I'll help you practice the language for how you're going to exit out. And I will help you. Let's set up a time to chat and research other doctors. That's what I would tell a friend. Now, to myself, I'm like, oh goodness, did I do something wrong? Maybe I could say it this way. I'm going to hurt their feelings, or it's going to look like this, or nobody really understands me. To be totally honest, it's a job. And I don't think that they're thinking of me as much as they really are. And so that doesn't mean that they don't have a connection, but I have to kind of gently remind myself it's not as personal as you think. And what would you tell your friend? And it's always different for me. And that's the kind of voice that I'm tapping into, is how would I support a friend? I'd be more empathetic and more direct with next steps are this, or here's what I'm hearing. And so that's kind of how you can focus on that advocacy piece. Again, it's taken years. This is not a linear journey. There's plenty of tears and overwhelming panic attacks, and you name it, the list goes on. But yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. It's hard to navigate the community. It's hard to feel judged when you feel like you don't have a voice, or you're told you're wrong. There's immediately this wall up where you're like, maybe I am, maybe it is in my head. And I also would just say the medical community at large, society at large, let's just say, it doesn't like it being in your head doesn't mean that it's not real. Like there's this big miscommunication with fibromyalgia. Like you said, okay, just slap on the diagnosis, but not going back deeper. That's why my doctor didn't want to say, hey, Erika, you have this, is because she was like, I know that it gets misdiagnosed. But I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
told her at one point, I was like, I know that I am weak and aching all the time. I know that. I'm confident of that. That doesn't mean that you see anything and that it's different, but I am confident of it. I'm not making it up because I'm anxious, or because, or because life's hard right now. It's challenging. It's challenging to navigate that and to use your voice.
Nurse Loves Essentials would like to formally invite you to the Inflamed Sisters Thriving Boss Brunch and Network event being hosted on Saturday, April the 22nd, 2023, at the Lakeland venue in Lakeland, Florida. This is a live, in person, and virtual event made for entrepreneurs. You will experience a safe space created for women who desire to grow thriving businesses as they balance their overall health and wellness. We encourage you to get your tickets now, link found in the show notes. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Water's Edge Essential Oils, Wahlberg Mickelson, Virtual Assistance Brunch, and Evolve Now Network. So that's the other thing is the key part that I like and I appreciate about what you share is the fact that you do have a therapist who has helped
Mm-hmm.
you to be able to also strengthen your voice, because we often would help our friends do better for themselves, oftentimes more than we would
Mm-hmm.
actually do for our own selves. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very important that we treat ourselves in the same way we would treat our loved ones and our friends, and we make sure that we get the best quality of care as possible. And that's by finding your voice, using it, no matter how challenging it may be. And if you can't do it on your own, get a friend to help you. So this
Mm-hmm.
helps me to transition into another phase of things. And that is because you found your voice and you chose to use it, you got the diagnoses that you needed. And there's likely going to be a journey to additional diagnosis. Oftentimes we find those of us who have these types of conditions, it comes in triples and sometimes 5 or 6 conditions. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you got to be prepared. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not here having toxic positivity, because I know I'm smiling and laughing at the same time, but sometimes you got to laugh
Mm-hmm.
because the hammer's
Yeah.
going to drop around the corner at some point. But you're resilient. This journey teaches you resilience. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things you've done with your journey is also used it as a way to educate others and to
Mm-hmm.
help others to see things from a different lens and perspective, specifically even children. So you recently wrote a book. Can you tell us the name of the book and what it's about?
Yeah. Do you have 3 hours? Just kidding.
Well, let's
Uh,
consolidate
maybe not.
it.
You don't want to hear me chat about this book for, yeah, we'll do 2.5. Kidding.
Mhm.
Okay, so I wrote a children's book. It's called Adalene Plays Many Ways. And it is, I would say, my story in a nutshell, but also not so much my story. So basically, I've always wanted to write a children's book. I used to be an elementary school teacher, and I always sort of envisioned, someday I'll see a book of my own on the bookshelf. I had no idea what topic, I had no idea what that was going to look like. And I think there's this misunderstanding that, like, oh, you are an educator, you're in education, so you know books. Two very, very different worlds. So let's start there. I did not have an understanding of how to do this. I didn't have any context. I'm Googling how to write a children's book. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. That was my first sort of start, is like, what do I do? Basically, the idea came to me when I realized, okay, my nephews are getting older. And my nephew Larson in particular, who's 3 at the time, he's asking a lot of good questions. So he calls me Aunt E, and he's saying, Aunt E, like, how come you can't play? Or how, yesterday we were doing this thing, and how come you're sitting down? Or why are you icing? Why are you sitting with that brace? Why are you using a cane? I mean, and I honestly, his questions were like totally valid and welcome, because sometimes he would see something and other times it was just Aunt E, and he didn't have context for that's what you're going through. And kids, they're sweet. And he, ever since he was younger, he referred to injuries as I knows, because it's like, I know, is how my sister used to respond to him, like, oh, that's hard, I know. So he used to call it an I know. So he used to tell me, Aunt E, I have an I know too. See, it's like this little teeny scratch. And I'm like, not totally the same, but I'm glad we're finding some similarities. And again, I'm not trying to like compare to my 3-year-old at the nephew at the time of like, oh, my injury is worse. But I could tell that he was just like grasping at straws, trying to make these connections and understand what it was that was sort of the ups and downs of what Aunt E is experiencing. And so then I suddenly realized, wait, I'm going to write a book about it, because I was doing quite a bit of research at the time, Googling chronic pain children's books that have main characters with pain. And basically what I found is most of the books out there, at least the ones that I was able to find, are specific to a certain diagnosis. Mom has cancer, grandpa has dementia, sister has MS. Nothing's wrong with that. But at the time, I was like, there's nothing out there that's vague enough that captures me. And so I don't know that I have a book to show him and to read with him to help him understand the ups and downs. And there are certainly books out there that feature characters that have disabilities and that, talk about it and that orient to questions. But I was looking for, 1, a story, and 2, something vague that would capture sort of me without really naming what it is. So I go about this journey. I decide, 2022 is going to be my year for writing this book. And I'm not a big New Year's goal person. I specifically have to temper some of those initiatives, I would say, because I have pain. I have to kind of say, I have these goals, but I'm going to need to be realistic. So I kind of set calendar year as I'm going to do this thing, because I needed to get over the hurdle and the fear of starting the book. So all of 2022 it took me one night to write my book, and then the next night I edited it. And then I was like, okay, how to find a children's book editor? I'm Googling, because I'm like, I don't know what to do next. Like the book, like the story itself came naturally, because it was my own sort of experience of like, well, this is what I go through, and I'm trying to write a story about it. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do next. And so I'm like tapping into different like blogs and recommendations, and I don't even know how much it costs. At this point, I've saved $500 for the whole process. Spoiler alert, it costs way more than $500 if you want to do it well and you want to do it right and you want your book to be out there. I mean, hiring an illustrator is quite expensive. Worth it. Always worth it. It's going to take you some more money than 500, which I didn't know at the time. So maybe you're listening and you're like, okay, good to know. So essentially 2022, again, got my book, hiring an editor, working on that, trying to figure out how to get an illustrator on board. I ended up starting a GoFundMe to reach out to the larger community to support with raising the funds. And what I did with that is I got over my fear of disclosing the topic of the book.
Mm-hmm.
because initially I wasn't going to share with any family and friends what it was about until it was out. Because one of the things that I've learned in my journey is going from having an able body to a disabled body is hardest for the people that knew you back in the day, that knew you back when. Just like it's hard for yourself, it's hard for the people that know who you were to get used to the new you. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole individual process of grieving and exploring and reevaluating. And, oh, what do you mean? Even just recently I thought, I don't know that I'm ever going to go on a slide on a water park again. That's kind of interesting. I mean, I could do the slide, but like usually there's like 5 flights of stairs to go on the slide. I don't want to do the stairs, even though I in theory could physically do it. It would hurt a
For
lot.
days later.
Yes. And so then like that was even a realization of like, that's kind of a bummer, because I have wonderful memories growing up of water parks. I love water parks. If we have
Mm-hmm.
kids someday, I'd love to take them there. I like, that's an example of like the grieving process, right? But disclosing what this story was about felt really vulnerable, because it felt as though everybody was suddenly going to label me as, oh, you mean you have this pain thing? And I'm like, yes, I've had pain for a while. It's not new to me, but it is hard to sort of invite others to come along that side of me. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yes, definitely.
So I start up this GoFundMe. Lots of lovely, incredibly generous people being like, yes, I believe in you. I trust you. At this point, I didn't even have a cover to show them, an illustration. I didn't have anything other than, hey, I'm writing this story. I want to read it to my nephews. And then my niece was born. I'm like, I want to read it to my niece, Anyway, so at this point, because I have a GoFundMe going, I kind of committed. I did commit. I made a promise to myself. If I'm going to invite family and friends to support me financially, I need to get out of my comfort zone and start connecting with people, networking.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like that word, but networking, kind of getting a feel for it. I started my LinkedIn profile and was like, what's happening out in the world? And I have met some incredible people just like you, where I'm like, wait, so many amazing people are doing incredible things. We're all tapping into our strengths and learning how to navigate the ups and downs of pain and illness and non apparent disabilities and all of the things. And alongside that, I met with a woman named Jennifer, and she said, hey, I believe in you. I believe in this story. We want to offer you a publishing scholarship. So I'm like, no, that's too good to be true. Like, there's no way. I'm thinking, she lives in Ireland. What? This has got to be a scam. Why does she want to meet with me? Why does she
Mm-hmm.
believe in me? Lots of meetings later, I'm like, I got to make sure there's a contract in place. I'm thinking, why me? What now? What is this? And essentially, she was like, yeah, there's nothing else out there, and we believe in you, and we are like doing this thing for disabilities. We're trying to change the stigma in terms of our rebel posture is like breaking those boundaries. And so I moved from sort of conceptualizing, hey, I'm going to self-publish, into, wow, somebody believes in me and my story. And long story short, wrapped up illustrations, pushed it off to the team for publishing, and here we are. And I, as we're recording this, have not yet held my book. We were having delay after delay after delay for the actual printing, but
Mm-hmm.
probably by the time it's out, I will have held it, flipped the pages, and I feel like there'll be this sense of like, calm, and also freedom again with it being out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This was amazing. That all that you've accomplished so far is just beautiful. Thank you for sharing this book with
Mm-hmm.
us. And I can't wait to hold it myself. Um, yeah, I'm so excited about this. Now, one of the things I also want to know is your book will be released very soon. What's
Mm-hmm.
next for you?
Great question. Um, See, this is where I have to be mindful of my needs. I'm not sure if my video is frozen on your end. It's frozen on my end.
Yes, it's frozen on
Okay.
my end too, but I know
Okay.
you're still there.
I'm here. I'm excited. My face doesn't look so thrilled, but here I am.
She's
Um, Here I am, just, looking like I'm lost. We'll see if it restarts. Not so much. Anyway, I have plenty of ideas for where I go, where I grow, what that looks like. I also work full time. I'm the academic dean of a private school it's all virtual, so I get to work from home, but I also work full time. So I have to kind of figure out where in the author business am I tapping into? What does that look like as I expand my reach? How do I invite kids into understanding the ups and downs of chronic pain without it compromising my chronic pain? I don't have
Mhm.
that, like, I haven't waved the magic wand to figure that out. I don't know what that looks like, other than I would love to go to some schools. I would love to go to some events and sort of, yeah, tap into my networking abilities, but also just connect with people who are doing big, big things in the world with chronic pain, chronic illness, invisible disabilities, you name it. That's kind of where my heart is, and now I just have to figure out what that looks like. So stay tuned.
Exactly. And we'll be teaming up in the near future
Mhm.
together at the Inflamed Sisters Thriving Summit and Gala, which is September the 23rd, 2023 this year. So we plan ahead, those of us with chronic illnesses, so that we
Oh
can
yeah.
prepare our mind and body and hearts to be able to make it through. So I like to plan far ahead. I would love to support you in spreading the word about your book and seeing what ways that we can get you into the schools and things of that sort. I recently created the Chronic Illness Health Support Network, and a part of that network is actually assisting people with using my network to push them into and help them to reach their goals. So we'll be partnering up on that.
Oh
I
yeah.
have a feeling.
I see you. I see you. I appreciate
You
you.
see me.
I
So
do.
the other thing I would like to do is, before we close out, please let us know where we can find you. And I know in the show notes we're going to be putting the information and links and all of those things for you as well. That will be available in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the little plug. I appreciate it.
Yes.
You can find me on Instagram. I'm most active there at Erika, Erika, Joy, Joy, Sneath, Sneath. And it's kind of a variety of an account. I call it my like author and like I'm an author and an advocate, but it's also just me. You'll get a little bit of everything there. I'm also on Facebook via Adalene Books and LinkedIn, Erika Joy Smith as well. So love to connect with you. And then I'll just make a sort of shameless plug for those that are currently underrepresented. And you can sort of, listeners, interpret that as you want. As you think about your bookshelves and the books that you give in general, I think there's more work to do with inviting other perspectives. So, like, a listener might be like, oh, but I don't have chronic pain, or like, I don't know, or I don't know if that applies to me. I think that's why you get the book, because you continuously expand representation and invite others' understanding. Same with, sort of a different family structure.
Mhm.
Get a book, start talking about it. That's the way to start these conversations. I think like our kiddos really want to have those conversations, and they want to orient themselves to a story. So my little shameless plug is like, not because I'm trying to become a best-selling author, but because like, hey, we want representation out there. Let's do this thing.
Hmm. Exactly. I love that. And it is important for us to find diversity and inclusion in all areas of life. Sometimes we get caught up with thinking that that only means our complexion or the color of our skin. And yes, we need more. From diverse races, as you know, we are currently in
Yes.
Black History Month, so we need more to
Mhm.
support that. But we also need it in the perspective of women, in the perspective of chronic illness, disability, all a variety of things, so that we can really learn to understand each other and then start to actually have more compassion in our world. And we get compassion
Mhm.
through actually learning and exchanging our knowledge with others. So Thank you so much. Now I'm sorry that you froze on the video
I
side.
know.
But this is audio too. So
Mhm.
I appreciate you, Erika, for joining us today. I look forward to holding your book in my hand and reading it and actually giving a copy to my granddaughter.
Aw.
And I am excited to see what is to come for you. I see best-selling author in many areas coming up for you. And I
No.
interviewed her first, I hope. So
Let the record show. That's so sweet. I'll get
I
you a
did it.
signed copy. You can frame it.
I want it. All right, then. Well, it has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time.
Katina.
As we stated, as I always say, my sisters, we may be inflamed, but we are still here. And as long as we are here, we might as well thrive together because inflamed sisters thrive together always. Take care and be well. And always remember to thrive always.